how to twist our pelvis.
Yeah.
We're doing it with one leg right now.
Yeah.
What a beautiful idea.
Yeah. And eventually it turns into two.
And then it turns into two, because as soon as you're doing can-can, like where else do you get to learn that the pelvis is responsible for the movement?
Today, Matilda and I are going to look at and break down single leg circle. It is a level 1 or a beginner exercise, but personally I think it's like a level 10 for the brain. There's so many components to this exercise. Hopefully we'll get through as much as we can. I'm going to teach the exercise full out on Matilda and then talk about some of the components that are very important to this exercise, fundamental skills in it that we need moving forward into more advanced skills. So Matilda's going to lay herself down. I'm going to give her a little pad for her head, especially for those that have tight shoulders and their chin lifts up. We really want their head to be in good alignment because you're not going to breathe very effectively, not to mention that's very uncomfortable in the back of the neck. She's going to have her arms nice and planted down, shoulders nice and broad, but no over squeezing of her arms onto the ground. Pick up whatever leg you choose, Matilda. And this bottom leg, you might not be able to see, it is underneath her hip joint. So if she were to lift her head up and look, she'd be on a pretend platform. She'd be standing on that leg. So this leg is what we call a Pilates V. And a lot of times you'll hear people say, you know, turn the leg out. It's only a cue we give them to stop getting them to turn in. So it's not truly a turnout. A Pilates V is very slightly a very slight turnout, pretty much almost parallel, and that is the way the leg naturally sits in the acetabulum, or the hip socket. So she's going to try to maintain her leg in her Pilates V position, and I'll take my hand away and I'm just going to let you go for it, okay? So you're going to inhale the first half of the circle, bring the leg down, and she's going to exhale, keep her pelvis stable, and bring her leg back to center. Inhale the first half of the circle, the leg comes down, and exhale, make sure all that air is out, and she's going to return it. Let's show the reverse, and then I'll break it down. Inhale to take it out, exhale, twist, and come back down. Exactly, one more time. And exhale, sorry Matilda. Okay, so she did a fantastic job of not moving her upper body. So this is one of the first places we teach stability of the shoulder and the arm bone. Now this is the first place we teach rotation. So she is moving her spine to move her pelvis to move her leg to take her over, as opposed to I'm just going to drop my leg out of my hip, overstretch my outer hip, mainly glutes. Then we're not really getting our deep six muscles organized either. So she's going to rotate as much of her spine and pelvis as she can without hanging her leg off of her, out of her hip, so to speak. So wherever her spine takes her, as much as her shoulders can stay on the mat. And then at that point, she's going to open up the hip stays stable, and then this leg rotates the rest of the way. If you take the leg out too far, and you know, everybody's hip joints are different. So if her hip socket does not allow this kind of range, we're going to see a rotation or a twisting. And now she has destabilized the hip. Yeah, so I'm going to take you through it with my own hands, okay? Yeah. So you're going to give me your leg. So again, she's got this nice platform. She's going to inhale the first half of the circle. The leg comes down. She's going to exhale, keep her pelvis and leg stable, and swing it around. One more time. Inhale. And so she's really, you know, wringing out her rib cage, her organs. Inhale, exhale, wring out those organs, Matilda. Make sure all that air is out before you arrive to center. Last one. And then exhale, twist it all the way around. And then you're going to be finished. Okay, so normally you would do 5 in one direction, 5 in the other direction. There's a lot to it. Do you want to add some more? Like, I don't want to get too have I missed anything?
I don't think so. I think it's an important piece to know that this is the level 1 exercise where we first introduce rotation. I think that's a really important part.
Yeah.
I'm going to now use you
and
just give them
a breakdown
in that, just to show you why we do it the way we do it.
Sure. Okay.
So Veronica's going to lay down. And so we would have already, you know, I'm not going to say mastered single leg circle because that takes a really long time. But to break it down, actually, before we advance it, really, I think there's one of two things, and unless you want to add, that we can do, right? The one is to just the knee bent.
Right.
Right? And so what you can start to do here is just practice hip rolling.
Yep.
Right? So this is really, really great place to just, your pelvic calf. So say Veronica is twisting to the left, you can talk to the right pelvic calf rolling over onto the left pelvic calf, and then the spine bringing her back to center. Right? This is pretty simple.
Yeah.
She could even, if she wanted to, she could roll and then just open the hip around and back up.
So we're just shortening the lever, right?
You're just shortening the lever.
Yeah.
The other thing you can do is put a TheraBand, actually, right? Grab a TheraBand, put it under your foot.
Yep.
And then this way you can help support your leg. And you're just going to, because a lot of people,
they clunk.
They do. They clunk.
Click and clunk in their
hip. A lot
hip.
of the clunking and the clicking, I believe, comes from typically bone on ligament, improper placement, let's say, of the femur bone.
Mm-hmm.
Typically, the leg bone isn't kind of housed in the back of the hip joint or in the hip joint properly, but that's a whole other thing. So just be aware of that. Or a lot of times it's because people go into too much of an external rotation, like you were talking about earlier.
Right, they turn way out.
They turn way too far out or in, and so the bone doesn't sit properly in the hip joint, and then so there's a little bit of noise that happens.
Yeah, a little clunking. And then just to add to that, you know, you have to remember that when this leg is coming down, these muscles here are lengthening, and so often people are holding that. It's like, no, you don't hold it. This actually gets to somewhat contract to support the lowering. You have to let this go.
So see the TheraBand?
That's
see what the TheraBand is doing?
Yep.
That's what our leg muscles are doing. So that's the beauty of the TheraBand, is that it is now, it is your muscles.
Exactly.
So that you don't have to do that work. You can release the front of the hip joint, right?
And if you do this enough and believe that you can actually be a little lazier with it, then your nervous system goes, oh, that's not so bad. And then when I let go of it, oh, it's a little bit easier. But it is, this is one that I feel people for years are always going, oh, you know, I don't understand this portion, or I'm still clicking, or like.
And so then the rotation. So lay yourself down just into your can-can position on your elbows.
Like this.
Yeah.
Okay.
So right from here, so we've done, so single leg circle is allowing one lever to stay stabilized while the other one is becoming part of the movement of the pelvis. Now you're kind of already teaching your pelvis how to rock.
Right.
So then when you come down to your can-can on your elbows, you like kind
a
of
double
already
leg.
Have that information. Now you're doing a double leg hip rotation.
Right.
Spinal rotation through the pelvis moving. Right? And so now, and then where does that come to it? So so that is a requirement. Now you're going to lay yourself down, and now you're going to do TikTok, just what we teach just before corkscrew, right? So now what is she doing here? This is double leg, single leg circle.
Yeah, right.
This is double leg circle. There you go. Right? So we're just initiating the movement from the pelvis, but that's what she's going to do. Double leg circle is what you teach after TikTok and just before corkscrew. But this skill, I don't know how else you would build this skill unless you started building it with a single leg first.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
So that's our perspective and that's our opinion, and it just makes a lot of sense to me.
Yeah. And looking at bodies for over 25 years.
Yeah.
You know,
and that too.
and seeing that too. Yeah. So I actually could say more, but I think we'll cut it off there.
I think so. If you guys have any questions or comments, you can ask them in the comment box.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.